October 1943. Somewhere over the North Sea, between England and the German coastline, for the German Luftwaffe, the autumn of 1943 marked a critical threshold. The Allied bombing campaign against the Reich had transformed from theoretical threat into operational reality. Every day, waves of American B-17 Flying Fortress bombers and B-24 Liberators were crossing the Channel in formations of 200, 300, sometimes 400 aircraft. Their targets: aircraft factories in Regensburg, ball-bearing plants in Schweinfurt, synthetic oil refineries across occupied Europe. The bomber streams flew at altitudes between 20,000 and 28,000 feet, their aluminum fuselages catching sunlight as they penetrated deeper into German airspace. Between January and October 1943, the United States 8th Air Force had flown 3,500 bomber sorties into occupied France and Germany. The losses were mounting, yes. American bombers were falling at a rate of 5 to 7% per mission, but the Americans calculated these losses as acceptable. The bombers were hitting their targets. Factories were burning. Production schedules were being disrupted. German air defense, despite its legendary efficiency, could not stop the arithmetic of attrition. The Luftwaffe faced an engineering and tactical problem unlike anything in its previous experience. For 4 years, German fighter pilots had dominated European skies. The Messerschmitt Bf-109 and the Focke-Wulf FW-190 were first-rate combat aircraft. German pilots had developed superior tactics. The Schwarm formation of 4 fighters, split into pairs, offered flexibility and mutual support. Experienced pilot training emphasized aggressive maneuvering and marksmanship. Over France, Poland, and the Soviet Union, German fighters had proven themselves capable of destroying enemy aircraft with precision and discipline. But the bomber defense problem was not a problem of individual fighter superiority. It was a problem of scale, range, and systemic strategy. A B-17 Flying Fortress, when fully armed and crewed, carried 13 50 caliber machine guns and 3 30 caliber weapons. Its defensive armament could saturate an airspace with 13,000 rounds per minute when all gunners were engaged. When bombers flew in tight formations, what American tacticians called combat boxes, the overlapping fields of fire created a defensive matrix that no single fighter could penetrate without sustaining catastrophic damage. German fighter pilots knew this. By late 1943, Jagdgeschwader units were reporting increasing losses during daylight interception missions. A fighter pilot attacking a bomber formation faced a mathematical reality. Closing to effective gun range meant flying through a wall of tracer fire from multiple defensive gunners simultaneously. The Bf-109's armor protection, while adequate for fighter versus fighter combat, was insufficient to absorb the kinetic energy of multiple 50 caliber rounds at close range. Between January and September 1943, the Luftwaffe lost approximately 2,000 fighters in the Reich defense campaign, Reichsverteidigung. These losses were not all to bomber defensive fire. German fighters were also engaging American escort fighters, primarily the P-47 Thunderbolt, which had begun appearing in escort formations in early 1943. But the cumulative effect was clear. German fighter strength was being consumed faster than production could replace it. By October 1943, the Luftwaffe had 1,150 single-engine fighters assigned to defend the Reich. The daily operational availability rate, aircraft actually ready for combat missions, was approximately 60%. This meant roughly 700 fighters were capable of launching combat sorties on any given day, against a bombing stream that could exceed 300 to 400 aircraft. With Allied escort fighters numbering 100 or more, the numerical disparity was becoming insurmountable. German Air Command, specifically the Luftflotte 3 under General Hugo Sperle and Luftflotte 4 under General Kurt Pflugbeil, initiated new tactical protocols. Fighters would climb to altitude before the bomber stream arrived. Formation attacks would be executed at precise angles to minimize exposure to defensive fire. Armor protection would be upgraded. New aircraft types would enter service. By autumn of 1943, the Focke-Wulf FW-190A5 represented the latest operational advancement. It carried 2 20mm cannon and 4 7.92mm machine guns. With a maximum speed of 408 miles per hour at 21,000 feet, it was the fastest fighter in regular German service. Equipped with the BMW 801D radial engine, it offered superior climb rate compared to earlier models and better engine reliability at high altitude. But even as these new variants reached Jagdgeschwader units in September and October 1943, German intelligence officers were aware of another threat emerging over the English Channel. Reports had begun arriving from observer posts along the French coast. A new American fighter type had appeared on the periphery of bomber escort formations. It was fast, faster than previous American fighters. Its profile was different: longer fuselage, distinctive radiator scoop underneath. German photo reconnaissance aircraft had captured images. The aircraft was designated P-51 Mustang. German air intelligence files indicated that American Mustangs had been active in North Africa since late 1942, flown by United States forces operating against Luftwaffe units in Tunisia. Intelligence summaries suggested it was a derivative or improvement of earlier American fighter designs. Early reports described it as fast but underpowered at altitude, a tactical limitation that German strategists believed would restrict its role to low-level escort and ground attack missions. In October 1943, Mustangs began appearing with increasing frequency in escort formations flying toward Germany. The first confirmed combat encounters between Luftwaffe fighters and the new American Mustang variant occurred in early November 1943 over the North Sea near the Belgian coast, during a bombing raid targeted at aircraft assembly plants near Liège. German pilots reported that the Mustang, despite its speed and agility at moderate altitudes, still could not match the Bf-109's climb rate or high-altitude performance. German command concluded that the Mustang threat was manageable, annoying perhaps, but not strategically decisive. This assessment was based on incomplete technical intelligence and would soon prove catastrophically wrong. April 1940, North American Aviation Factory, Inglewood, California. The P-51 Mustang was born from a military specification, not from radical innovation. In early 1940, the British Air Ministry issued a request to American aircraft manufacturers: design a new fighter that could be produced under license in the United States and delivered to Royal Air Force squadrons within 120 days. The timeline was aggressive, nearly impossible by conventional design standards. Most aircraft development cycles required 18 to 24 months. North American Aviation's chief designer Edgar Schmood, along with his engineering team, accepted the contract. Schmood was a German-born engineer who had immigrated to the United States in 1930. His design philosophy was straightforward: minimize weight, maximize aerodynamic efficiency, and integrate the most powerful engine available. He refused to copy existing fighter designs. Instead, his team would create an aircraft from first principles. The original Mustang prototype, designated NA-73, first flew on October 26, 1940. It was powered by an Allison V1710 liquid-cooled engine, an American-built power plant that generated 1,100 horsepower at sea level. The aircraft's performance was immediately impressive: maximum speed of 382 miles per hour, excellent range compared to contemporary fighters, and responsive handling characteristics. British pilots who evaluated the prototype reported favorable results. Production orders followed. By 1942, Mustangs were entering service with the RAF, but operational experience revealed a critical limitation. The Allison engine, while adequate at sea level and medium altitudes, suffered significant power loss above 15,000 feet. At 30,000 feet, the engine produced less than 800 horsepower, insufficient for air-to-air combat against German fighters that operated routinely at those altitudes. The Mustang's aerodynamic efficiency, its greatest strength, also exposed its weakness. Without sufficient engine power, altitude performance became marginal. RAF pilots, frustrated by the aircraft's high-altitude deficiency, proposed a radical modification. The Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the same power plant that equipped the Supermarine Spitfire, should be installed in the Mustang airframe. The Merlin was a proven design, producing approximately 1,520 horsepower in its upgraded variants. But the integration would not be simple. Engine mountings required redesign. Cooling systems would need modification. Fuel system plumbing had to be rerouted. The project demanded precision engineering and months of development work. In late 1942, North American Aviation's engineering team, under the direction of Robert Chilton, chief project engineer for the Merlin conversion, began the installation work. The first Mustang with a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, XP-51B, rolled out for testing in December 1942. Test flights revealed the transformation immediately. The aircraft's maximum speed jumped to 441 miles per hour at 24,000 feet. Climb rate improved dramatically. Ceiling altitude increased to over 42,000 feet, matching or exceeding contemporary German fighter performance. But engine power alone was insufficient. The aircraft's radiator cooling system, designed for the lower heat Allison engine, required reconfiguration. The original radiator scoop, a simple rectangular intake underneath the fuselage, became a point of focus. North American engineer Lee Atwood, working with RAF aerodynamicist Ronald Harker, proposed a counterintuitive solution: increase the radiator scoop size slightly and modify its internal geometry. Harker's boundary layer calculation suggested that, properly designed, the scoop could recover kinetic energy from the cooling airflow and actually produce net thrust. The modification was implemented. Testing confirmed the theory. The modified radiator scoop recovered approximately 2,000 pounds of thrust, equivalent to additional engine power. It was an elegant aerodynamic insight that transformed a necessary cooling component into a performance advantage. The P-51B underwent intensive flight testing at RAF Hornchurch in April 1943. Test pilot Ronnie Hahn, a veteran of 300 combat hours, flew the aircraft through a comprehensive evaluation program. His reports were unambiguous. The Merlin-powered Mustang was a revolutionary combat aircraft. It combined the range and fuel efficiency of the original design with engine power and high-altitude performance that matched or exceeded the Bf-109 and FW-190. American Air Command received the test results with recognition of strategic significance. The 8th Air Force, commanded by Major General Ira Eaker, had been suffering escalating losses in daylight bombing operations over Germany. The bomber escort problem, how to protect large formations during deep penetrations into enemy territory, was becoming a crisis. Existing American fighters like the P-47 Thunderbolt, while powerful, had limited range. They could escort bombers to targets in Belgium and northern France, but not to industrial centers in central Germany. The Merlin-powered Mustang, designated P-51B in American service, offered a solution. With fuel tanks in the wings and fuselage, it could operate at ranges exceeding 2,000 miles. Equipped with drop tanks that could be jettisoned after fuel depletion, it could escort bomber formations all the way to Berlin and back, a distance of over 100 miles one way from English bases. Production accelerated. North American Aviation committed all assembly capacity to Mustang manufacturing. Dallas, Texas, and Inglewood, California factories operated 24-hour production schedules. By May 1943, the first P-51B fighters began arriving at 8th Air Force bases in England. Initial squadrons assigned to the 354th Fighter Group received their aircraft in December 1943. The 354th was commanded by Colonel Kenneth Martin, an experienced fighter pilot who understood the technological implications. His pilots, men like James Hoover and George Preddy, represented a new generation of American fighter aviators trained in systematic air combat tactics and equipped with an aircraft of exceptional technical capability. German air intelligence files updated their assessments in December 1943 and January 1944. The new American escort fighter was no longer dismissed as a low-altitude specialist. Reports indicated that it possessed high-altitude performance comparable to German fighters. It had exceptional range. Most critically, it was already arriving in England in operational squadrons. The assumptions of German Air Command, the belief that high-altitude bomber escort was technically impossible, were about to face their first serious challenge. January 11, 1944. Airspace over Oschersleben, Germany. Airweight 47 hours. The 354th Fighter Group, callsign Pioneer Mustang Group, launched 48 P-51B aircraft from Debden Airfield in Essex, England. Their mission? Provide bomber escort for 239 B-17 Flying Fortresses and 31 B-24 Liberators targeted against the Messerschmitt assembly plant at Oschersleben, approximately 110 miles southwest of Berlin. Bomber stream altitude, 24,000 feet. Escort formation altitude, 26,000 feet. Outside air temperature at operational altitude, minus 58 degrees Fahrenheit. The first engagement occurred at 8:47 hours near Magdeburg, approximately 80 miles west of the target. German fighter units from Jagdgeschwader 1 and Jagdgeschwader 11, equipped primarily with Bf-109 Gustav variants and FW-190A fighters, began climbing from their bases to intercept the bomber stream. Approximately 120 German fighters rose to challenge the American formation. Obergefreiter Willi Unger, flying a Bf-109 G6 in the second Staffel of JG-1, was vectored toward the escort fighters by ground control radar. Unger was an experienced pilot, 47 confirmed kills, 680 operational hours. At Aero 8, 52 hours at an altitude of 2,700 feet, Unger acquired visual contact with what his combat report described as a new type of single-engine fighter, unfamiliar profile, long fuselage design. The aircraft was a P-51B flown by Captain Donald Beeson of the 354th Fighter Group. What happened next would be replicated across the engagement zone dozens of times that morning. Unger initiated a climbing attack from 8 o'clock low, a standard German interception geometry designed to achieve superior positioning and energy advantage. The Bf-109 began its climb, but the P-51B, with its Merlin engine operating at combat power and optimized cooling, matched the German fighter's climb rate. More critically, the Mustang's rate of turn, the ability to change direction rapidly while maintaining altitude and airspeed, exceeded the Bf-109's capability by approximately 15% at that altitude and airspeed combination. Beeson rolled left into the attacking Bf-109, executing a turning fight at 27,000 feet. The Bf-109, committed to an attack geometry that assumed German altitude and climb superiority, found itself in a disadvantageous energy state. Within 180 seconds of initial contact, Beeson had maneuvered inside Unger's defensive radius, lined up firing solution, and triggered his 650 caliber machine guns. Unger's Bf-109 sustained hits across the fuselage and left wing route. Engine coolant temperature spiked. He initiated a diving descent to escape. Beeson ceased fire, breaking off the engagement to rejoin the bomber stream. Unger crash-landed 15 miles northeast of Magdeburg with a destroyed engine. He ejected and made contact with ground forces. Similar engagements occurred simultaneously across a 40-mile front. Major James Howard, commanding the 354th Fighter Group's 364th Squadron, engaged and destroyed a FW-190A at 26,500 feet. Captain George Preddy, a 23-year-old pilot who would become the highest-scoring American fighter pilot against German aircraft, engaged 4 separate Bf-109 Gustav fighters over the course of the bomber escort mission, destroying 1 and damaging 2 others. First Lieutenant Gordon Compton flew his first combat mission that day and achieved 2 confirmed kills before fuel considerations forced a return to England. German pilot reaction was immediate and confused. Combat reports filed by JG-1 and JG-11 pilots consistently noted that the American escort fighters possessed unexpected altitude performance and turning capability. One pilot, Major Hajo Harriman, an experienced fighter commander with 70 confirmed kills, reported that the new American fighter type appeared to have performance characteristics equal or superior to the Bf-109G at altitude. His assessment was technically accurate but incompletely analyzed. The real advantage was not merely in raw speed or climb rate. It was in the combination of factors: sustained power output at altitude, superior turning radius, pilot visibility through the bubble canopy, and the psychological factor of operating an aircraft proven superior in combat. The morning's engagement resulted in measurable outcomes. American losses: 3 P-51B fighters destroyed in aerial combat, 1 pilot killed, 2 pilots recovering to England via crash landing. German losses: 11 fighters destroyed, 2 damaged, 7 pilots killed or captured. The bomber stream, despite fighter interception, continued to the target. 203 bombers dropped ordnance on the assembly plant, destroying 2 major production buildings and damaging machine shops. 4 B-17s were lost to flak in German fighter attacks. American fighter escort had prevented the bomber stream from being broken up by coordinated fighter attacks that morning. The mathematical exchange, roughly 3 American fighters for 11 German fighters, plus successful bomb run completion. By day's end, January 11, 1944, represented a tactical inflection point. German Air Command received casualty reports and engagement summaries with growing alarm. The new American fighter was not merely a tactical impediment, it was a strategic weapon. Deep penetration fighter escort, the capability that American air planners had theorized but never fully achieved, had materialized on the operational stage. Bombers could now operate under protective fighter cover all the way to Berlin and beyond. German air defense doctrine, predicated on the assumption that fighters could not accompany bombers beyond 200 miles inland, was obsolete. Luftwaffe commanders understood the implication immediately. Pilot losses that morning included several experienced squadron leaders. Replacement pilots, increasingly younger and undertrained due to accelerating attrition rates, would face an adversary with superior aircraft. German pilot morale, previously sustained by technical confidence in their fighters' superiority, experienced its first significant fracture. Within weeks, German fighter pilots began referring to the P-51 Mustang by a name that would persist throughout the remainder of the war: Die Rote Eins, the Red One, referencing the red spinner cowl that many American fighters carried as identification marking. The name carried unspoken acknowledgement of a technological crossover event. The American bomber offensive, previously characterized by escalating losses and tactical vulnerability, had acquired the essential weapon system that transformed it from attrition strategy into sustainable strategic campaign. February 1944 through March 1945, European Theater of Operations. The introduction of the P-51B Mustang and escort role initiated a cascade of operational consequences that fundamentally altered the strategic balance of the air war over Germany. Between January and May 1944, the 8th Air Force flew 2,247 bomber sorties into German territory. American fighter losses during this period averaged 2.3% of escort aircraft committed. German fighter losses averaged 7.8% of defending fighters. The mathematics were irreversible. For every American fighter lost, German Air Command was losing 3 or 4 fighters. More critically, German pilot losses were accelerating at rates that training pipeline could not replace. By April 1944, Luftwaffe 4 reported operational fighter strength declining to 840 single-engine fighters Reich-wide. Serviceability rates, aircraft available for daily operations, had dropped to 45% due to attrition, maintenance strain, and fuel shortages. Effective daily fighter strength available to counter bomber formations had become approximately 380 aircraft. Against American escort formations routinely numbering 400 to 500 fighters, the numerical disparity had inverted. German pilots were no longer operating from position of technical superiority, but from tactical desperation. The Luftwaffe response was multifaceted and strategically revealing. German Air Command initiated tactical reorganization. Instead of dispersed fighter attacks, they concentrated available fighters into massed formations of 60 to 100 aircraft, attempting to achieve overwhelming numerical force against escort fighters before they could engage bomber formations. The result was predictable. Concentrated American fighter responses using superior tactical radio communication and coordinated attack geometry defeated the massed German formations in engagement after engagement. February 20th, 1944, Big Week, saw the 8th Air Force lose 2 UM-44 bombers to all causes. German losses: 265 fighters destroyed. The exchange ratio had become economically unsustainable for the Luftwaffe. German aircraft design bureaus accelerated development of new fighter types intended to counter the Mustang threat. The Messerschmitt Me 262, a revolutionary twin-engine jet fighter, was moved from developmental status to emergency production priority. The Focke-Wulf Ta-152, an advanced FW-190 variant with improved high-altitude capability, was rushed into limited production. The Heinkel, a 162 Volksjäger, a single-engine jet intended for rapid pilot training and deployment, was also accelerated. These aircraft represented genuine technical innovations, particularly the jet-powered designs, but they arrived too late in the war to alter the strategic trajectory. Only 262 fighters entered Luftwaffe service before May 1945, with only a fraction of those seeing sustained combat operations. Pilot training for jet aircraft consumed time and resources unavailable in the final year of war. The Ta-152 achieved limited operational deployment. Fewer than 100 aircraft saw combat before war's end. These exotic aircraft, regardless of their technical merit, could not replace the 2,000-plus fighters lost between January and December 1944. The strategic consequence was unambiguous. American bombers achieved air superiority over Germany between March and May 1944, and maintained it through the war's conclusion in May 1945. Between June 1944 and May 1945, the Strategic Bombing Survey estimated that German aircraft production declined by 30% below theoretical capacity, with the decline accelerating in 1945 as precision bombing of aircraft engine plants, airframe assembly facilities, and ball bearing production intensified. Synthetic oil refineries were destroyed systematically. German fighter pilot training was curtailed due to fuel shortages. Experienced pilots were rotated to defensive squadrons defending the Reich, creating cascading experience deficiency across pilot corps. The P-51 Mustang became the numerical foundation of American air superiority. By war's end, North American aviation and associated production facilities had manufactured 9,348 P-51 Mustangs in all variants. 4,167 aircraft were delivered to the 8th Air Force. Average pilot flying hours for American fighter pilots by late 1944 reached approximately 350 hours per pilot, sufficient for mission proficiency, but not optimal for developing expert-level air combat capability. German pilots, by contrast, were operating on training programs reduced to 100 to 150 flying hours per pilot by 1944 due to fuel rationing. The training disparity compounded the aircraft capability differential. The Mustang's operational dominance was quantifiable. American fighter pilots flying P-51 Mustangs claimed 4,150 confirmed aerial victories against German aircraft during World War II, approximately 40% of all 8th Air Force fighter victories. Against this, German pilots achieved approximately 320 confirmed kills against Mustangs. The kill ratio exceeded 15.1 in American favor. Post-war analysis revealed the deeper significance. The P-51 Mustang demonstrated that technological innovation, specifically integrating the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine into an already superior airframe design, could generate exponential operational advantages when deployed at strategic scale. The aircraft achieved this advantage not through revolutionary innovation, but through systematic engineering optimization, aerodynamic efficiency, engine integration, radiator design, operational range through fuel capacity, and pilot visibility through advanced canopy design. The Mustang's influence on post-war aircraft development proved equally significant. The North American F-86 Sabre, primary American jet fighter of the Korean War and beyond, incorporated design philosophy traceable directly to the Mustang program. Laminar flow wing designs, influence of captured German aerodynamic research, and systematic integration of engine and airframe proved foundational to advanced fighter aircraft development throughout the Cold War. Modern fighter aircraft, the Lockheed Martin F-22 Raptor, the Eurofighter Typhoon, the Sukhoi Su-57, trace their technological genealogy to principles established during the Mustang development and operational deployment. The concept of combining aerodynamic efficiency with available engine power, optimizing weight-to-thrust ratios, and integrating pilot interface systems for maximum situational awareness represent constants of fighter aircraft design for 80 years. The strategic lesson transcended aviation technology. The German Air Force, equipped with capable aircraft and staffed with experienced pilots, was ultimately defeated not by individual aircraft superiority, but by systemic disadvantage. The Mustang's true strategic impact was not derived from any single technical superiority, but from the American capacity to deploy superior aircraft in overwhelming numbers, sustain pilot training and replacement at rates exceeding losses, conduct continuous operational campaigns without strategic pause, and integrate emerging technology into operational units systematically. German Air Command, constrained by fuel shortages, pilot attrition exceeding replacement capacity, and industrial capacity overwhelmed by precision bombing, faced an adversary whose technological innovation was coupled with industrial and logistical superiority. No individual aircraft variant could overcome that systemic disparity. The P-51 Mustang represented not technological revolution, but technological maturation applied at strategic scale. That combination, mature engineering coupled with industrial capacity and strategic vision, revealed fundamental truths about modern warfare that remain operationally relevant 7 decades later.